Hey there, podcast listener, it's Ez. I just wanted to say that we're about to go on a little bit of a hiatus, which means that there won't be a podcast for maybe up to 3 months. Tranzmission is going through a transition, and when we come back in 2025, we're going to have a fresh sound. We're just prepping for a new generation of transmission. We've been doing this for 3 years, and I wanted to give a special thanks to all the people that have been involved with the production of the show over the last 3 years and where we're moving to. So shout out to Sev, Jay, Selma, June, Charlie, also known as Kai. Also want a special thanks to George, Sean, and I gotta remember everyone's names. There's so many people that have been involved with Tranzmission. Anyway, love you all. Thank you so much for contributing. Special thanks as well to our one and only cis person that does actually deal with our podcasts every single week and posts on social media. Thank you, Toby. He hasn't had a single week off pretty much for 3 years, and so we're all going to go and have a little bit of a hiatus. If you'd still like to catch your transmission fix though, don't worry. Although there might not be podcasts, you can head over to the 4ZZZ website, 4ZZZ.org.au, and you can listen back to our live broadcasts, which will still be running for the next 3 months. So check them out. You can listen live from 9 a.m. every Tuesday morning, or you can listen back on demand on that 4ZZZ website. Love you all so much, and thank you for supporting the show, and we'll see you after we have had all of our surgeries. Bye!
At 4ZZZ, we acknowledge the traditional owners of the land on which we broadcast. We pay our respects to the elders past, present and emerging of the Turrbal and Jagera people. We acknowledge that their sovereignty over this land was never ceded,
and we stand in solidarity with them.
You're listening to Tranzmission on 4ZZZ, amplifying the trans and gender non-conforming voices of Brisbane and beyond.
Hello, you're listening to Tranzmission on 4ZZZ. My name is Ez, I use he, him pronouns, and I'm joined in studio by...
George, and I use they, them pronouns.
George!
It's me.
The one and only George Levi. You may recognise George's work from the 4ZZZ Radiothon work. You may also recognise George from just being a general Z-head.
Just being around.
Yeah.
Just that guy.
I'm here, happy little dude. George and I are talking today about a film that we recently saw together by the king of the trans men himself, Elliot Page.
It's true.
Community appointed, of course. The film was called Close to You. Which is quite interesting. It's the first film where Elliot plays as a very consciously forward-facing trans man in the role. The story is about a trans man who revisits his hometown, facing family tensions. He reconnects with an old flame, rediscovering himself. His journey leads to self-acceptance and potentially some newfound strength as well. So
I feel like that's a fairly adequate description of the film.
Yeah.
As far as a little blurb goes.
Yeah. And we saw that on just this week, so pretty recently.
It's true, because at the moment the New Farm Queer Film Festival is on at New Farm Cinema. So it is running through until the end of this weekend. And there is so much on, so you should have a little look at the website, which can be just found on the 5 Star Cinemas website, the New Farm location, and there's plenty going on.
Oh yeah, they've got like The People's Joker as well. If you missed out on seeing that, you should go check that out.
Because so I think there was a Sunday and a Monday screening of The People's Joker, and it is now done.
Damn!
But Vera Drew is an exceptional director and writer, and put together one of the weirdest, most fantastical films, a beautiful sort of trans allegory told from the perspective of the Joker, and it is so weird and wonderful and wacky. So yes, if you missed it, you should absolutely seek it out. Try and find it wherever you can. I don't know who owned the Joker. Is it Marvel or the other one? DC. They were very unhappy that this film was made without their consent, and it required quite a bit of sort of, I guess, legal massaging in a way to be able to get this film to be released officially. I went and saw an unofficial screening last year that was still very much not okay to be shown. When Vera came over to premiere it in Australia for the first time, is an absolute treat. And yeah, The People's Joker really blew me away in so many ways. So this is now a year on, and we've got the Queer Film Festival on now at the moment. They're doing such a good job, and we went and saw Close to You on Saturday night. Interesting film style, I think.
Yeah, I have not seen a film it's actually like it's the most classic Elliot Page indie kind of abstract artsy film. Like, it's exactly how I imagine Elliot makes films. But also with director Dominic Savage, who also was in the credits at the end. It was like Dominic did like directing, story writing, narrative building.
I think when we were sitting in the
sound, music.
when we were sitting and watching the credits roll at one point, when it came up for composition as well, I was like, geez, calm down, Dominic.
Dom, you're everywhere, man.
Yeah, someone who gets intrinsically like deeply involved in the projects that they're working on, in the films they're writing, directing, producing, etc. And I think the sort of conversation around this film, which we were just discussing off air, is the use of a limited script and having more forward-facing like improvisation, which can be really effective, and then other times can be really hard to follow when actors don't have a full script to work with in scenes that require a lot of nuance. So yeah, super interesting. I had to think about it a lot.
We were crying a lot too. Like, there's a lot of really emotive.
Oh, totally.
I really forgot to bring the tissues.
And I love crying, but it was pretty much openly weeping throughout several of the scenes. And cried all the way home. And
it hits you. It hit me in the soft spot too. Like, I was like, yeah. It's got lots of mixed reviews though. So if you were to jump on Google and you type in like Close to You, Elliot Page, you'll see that Rotten Tomatoes has given it a 65%. IMDb like 4.4 out of 10. And the Irish Times are also mentioned with a 3.5. So it's like, average film, slightly above or below average. I don't know, depends on your take on it.
Yeah, totally. So worth a watch, and it is absolutely incredible to see Elliot on screen again in a feature. Such like a big deal. It was one of those occasions where like, seeing, a body like quite like mine, I guess, but also I was just like, damn, I have to start working out what the hell. I was like,
are you that jacked?
No,
Elliot's
I'm
like
not even
0%
at all.
Body fat.
But there was a couple of sort of like amazing scenes where you're looking and I was like, oh my gosh, I have to work on my core strength.
Is that why you were mentioning that earlier? Core strength, Elliot's
I've been
reminding
thinking about it for 3 days straight.
But it's an interesting film. We're going to dive more deeply into it throughout the episode today. So we'll be chatting about Close to You, and then all the things that is brought up for us as well, because it's kind of a bit of a journey. And I think, if you're going to look at reviews online and you're like, okay, this is like, I went and looked at the stats before we went and saw it, and I was like, okay, my bar's low. And then I watched it and I went, this hit me differently, but maybe that's because the people reviewing this aren't trans people.
Yeah.
And maybe they are, I don't know, but I think from my experience as a living and breathing trans man, watching this story hit me in a lot of ways, and I'm wondering how that translated to non-trans listeners. So,
how many genders are there?
I don't know. I just got here.
You're listening to Tranzmission on 4ZZZ. My name is Ez. I use he, him pronouns.
I'm George. I use they, them pronouns.
And surprise, someone else came into the studio.
This is Sean, your favourite abomination about town, and my pronouns are crashing your radio show without any notice. She, her.
Yeah, Sean, welcome.
I'm really happy to be here. I honestly have no idea what's going on, so yeah.
We can tell you what's going on.
Yeah, tell me what's going on.
So George and I, this week, it was a bit planned, but also sort of spontaneous.
A
spontaneous movie outing.
We'd had intentions of going to see this film for Queer Film Fest that's happening in New Farm Cinemas, but had both forgotten that it was on. I was
Last
thankfully reminded at work by a customer who comes in who reminded me that it was on that same
So what
night.
you're telling me is that ADHD is a neuroprocessing disorder whereby you have trouble.
I actually looked at my watch and was like, oh, it's October. Like, I had lost time.
And then George was like, Ez, it's on tonight. Did you want to go?
So it worked out perfectly. Yeah, the film in question is close to you.
Mm-hmm.
It is the Elliot Page film in collaboration with Dominic Savage. And we are sort of diving a little bit into, I guess, the semantics of it, but also, yeah, like the cinematography and the way that it was shot and the way that they put that film together. And so, yeah, the small amounts that we know of it based on the reviews that we have read and the articles that we have read in the 2 days in between seeing it and doing this show.
And also it ruminating in my mind, because like I feel like it's really stuck with me, and that's usually a testament to a film that's either affected me. Yes. Which is deserving of recognition, unless it's like really irritated me and I can't stop thinking about how terrible it was.
No, I think this one is such a specific, like the nuances of visiting your hometown or visiting home after your transition.
Especially a small town.
And what that means for you, and the ways that so often when we are with family, we have a unfortunate habit of sort of regressing.
Defaulting back to old habits,
to old feelings, and to old behaviours, and how that affects and impacts you. And so I really felt that. I really felt it in a big way, which is why I was crying so much. Could not stop weeping. Yeah. Did not bring tissues. Had to use
and
my
there is
sleeve.
that very much that gender diverse thing of like the wondering, is the grooves in the record of my mind, are they permanent? Will I forever fall back? Can I ever move out of them consistently to be a full person? So it's fascinating to hear that there's films that are talking about this deeply intrinsic thing about changing yourself and being able to maintain that change.
And also improvised. Like, it was an which...
It was a mostly improvised dialogue.
Yes.
Like a very loose script, which, is so fascinating and so interesting. I think it worked really well with Savage's shorts that it's made, but it felt really interesting in a feature that was tackling such big things to have. And it's a lot of pressure on actors as well to really deliver in such like emotionally charged scenes.
Oh, yeah. Particularly, there's a scene where it's a dinner and the family are all reuniting for Dad's birthday. And Sam, who is played by Elliot Page, Sam is, been estranged from the family for like 4 years, been living in Toronto in the city, has come back. And, there's some old partners of siblings that are just assholes, more or less, and then some of them are really lovely as well. So and there's all how they interact together, but there's tension, and then you're all sitting around a table and everyone just falls back into you can see it was really like everyone falls back into their childhood self, like growing up, like what that house was, all the siblings, Sam as well, and you're just like, I felt myself like really tense. And then everyone's prickly.
Oh, 100%.
Everyone's prickly.
And you can feel it. It's so visceral. I'm like contorting in the chair while I was speaking.
I like to think that, I like to think that actors love doing that sort of shit.
Yeah.
It's like, this is their craft. This is the muscle that they train to be able to, in a moment, take a thing, feel it, direct it, elicit a response.
And it does,
Sounds magnificent.
happen. And I think as well, like the movement between the actors and like the dialogue that did come out really hits, I think, if you're a like trans or gender diverse person who has had experiences with family that are not fantastic. This film will punch you in the guts.
Good, as good art should.
As good art should.
Especially if you like left home and then returned for some reason, like I think that's definitely part of it. I also want to like, as like a trigger warning for our listeners as well. If you do go watch this, it's, there is some transphobic stuff. It's not very heavy and like violent. There's none of that at all. It's very social. And it's the family overall, I'm going to say, were really trying so hard to be supportive, and it was actually quite beautiful.
Yes. Yeah.
There was a lot of supportive elements there, even though there was a lot of ignorance as well.
Yeah, I think
which is relatable.
Yeah, 100%. So I think, like, it wasn't as stressful a watch as it could have been had there been, like, openly sort of, like, verbally violent characters.
I guess that's probably one of the ways in which it defines how something that is sort of queer-led or gender-diverse-led is that it sounds like it allows for a lot of nuance in that there is good, there is bad. And, you know, instead of things where it's essentially just trauma porn.
Yes.
Yes, I don't watch Euphoria.
The beautiful rune of... the beautiful... Oh no, I'm a beautiful rune of a trans woman. I am so gorgeous and stunning, but, like, why is the world so awful to me? And it's like... It's
literally
more complicated.
Making me think of Hunter Schafer and Euphoria, and I'm like, gosh, this is such...
Yeah.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. But it's also, like, one of my favorite characters was the dad.
Oh, incredible character.
I think he did a wonderful job of just... it kind of gives me that feeling of, like, you know, there's a dad who's really awkward about, like, I don't... Okay, my kid is no longer my daughter. My kid is now my son. It's been 4 years. We don't really communicate. And then I'm like, okay. And so the dad is just very... he's very gender affirming. He's very sweet. He comes across as quite like personable as well. Like I related to him as an audience member. I felt him being like, no, I love you and I want you in my life and I'm willing to do whatever that takes to have you here. And I think that was really heartwarming for me as an audience member and as a trans person to have this role played out in front of me.
Yeah.
And also to see how Sam was reacting, because
totally
Sam responding to all this, a lot of dialogue that I have most definitely heard in my household, and watching Sam, and I'm like, oh, I'd be cringing and kind of irritated by this right now. But also the expectation of Sam to, like, congratulate their parents on the bare minimum was also kind of a little tedious.
Yeah.
So it's Peter Outerbridge who plays the father, isn't it?
Yes.
Guy I love to see.
Yes.
Excellent character actor.
Jim is dad's name, yeah. And yeah, he did a wonderful job. Mum was good too, Miriam. She did a really great job of, like...
Yeah, Wendy Crewson did a great job of sort of portraying a family member who has a habit of that sort of
worrying.
The worrying, but also, like, and, you know, we see this a lot, but that sort of, like, self-flagellation when you misgender someone to the point where you as a trans person have to, or a gender diverse person have to then, like,
comfort
the person over and over again.
And heal their trauma for them traumatizing you. God, none of us know what that's like.
Hot tip: just move on. When you, like, keep moving. Correct yourself and keep
push
moving.
Push through with a conversation. Correct and move on. So I think having that experience with both of those parents or parental figures it was really well done. I think those actors just bloody nailed it.
And improvised. I think there was probably a lot of workshops and, like, that they did to have that those relationships as well. And, you know, the family dynamic and leaving Toronto and going out back to your country town to reconnect with family for Dad's birthday, and you have all the elements there, and then the history with your siblings. You know, you were close to some and not close to others, and then others are dating assholes you have to tolerate at the table, and you know, there's all that dynamic that plays out, and it's well worth watching. I do think that a lot of the film, there could have been more said with less actual film. Like there was a lot of time I felt like it was fluffing around and just lots of landscapes and, like, pondering, and the camera was on Elliot for really long periods of time as he was getting changed, and we're I guess analyzing and experiencing Sam.
Yeah.
It was, and seeing trans bodies as well was a part of that.
Yeah, I think so as well. And I think it was sort of like that sort of slow cinematography of showcasing the world around Sam, which I think was done really beautifully, but did allow for some pacing problems later on when they were actually getting into the heart of the film, and then you're like, we are 3/4 of the way through and we're just starting this.
Yeah, it did feel quite slow paced.
So what was the obviously, because I mean, I haven't seen it, and I'm curious because, you know, I mean, other films that do detail the trans experience, the leering camera on trans bodies has been an issue, obviously, in cinema. There's a few that we could point out. Sorry, Eddie Redmayne, that really sucked. But the treatment of how they approach the fact that Elliot Page, has a body that is part of the public discourse, and that as you see this body in these moments, is the treatment of that visually, cinematographically sensitive and kind and not leering in any way? Is that...
Yeah, I feel like the way that the camera moved worked with that sort of experience. I think, for me as well, it was just really important because I was like, you just missed when we were first talking about it. I was like, it's like seeing a body like mine. Mine's not that ripped, but and had
can't grate cheese on them abs.
No, cannot.
Yeah. Also, I think everyone's thinking about those abs.
So that experience, I was like, okay, well, you can take the camera off the abs now. I feel bad enough. I'm like, yeah, it's kind of like me. That's awesome, but also, oh, bloody hell. And admittedly, it was in the setup where they did do those long, slow, lingering shots.
Getting up in the morning
to start this sort of journey home. And it didn't feature quite dramatically in any other way, which I think was aside from a brief moment at the end, but even in saying that, I still think it was quite well done.
It was tasteful. It also, Elliot Page plays depressed so well.
Good grief, yes.
And it's just
I'm sure there's a wealth of experience to draw upon.
Yes, if you've read his memoir, you can absolutely attest that he has lived experience for that.
Yeah, 100%. And I think there is that, something that I share, and I think that a lot of, people like us share, is that there is a deep despair in the time it takes to move through transitions or realizations or hurdles and struggles like that, which, the loss of time is something that I think hits me really hard. Yesterday I watched Will and Harper.
Oh, yeah.
It is a documentary sort of written and produced by Will Ferrell alongside a bunch of other amazing, really amazing people, and Harper Steele's transition and moving through that and following her journey it was a tearjerker. I cannot
talk about the
enough.
last person that you would expect to be, the vessel with which we have a story like this. I just can't look at him without thinking of him naked, screaming Snoop-a-Loop from that bloody stupid film. But and yet here we are.
Yes.
Oh, he's a fierce advocate.
The depth of sensitivity and compassion.
Oh, it is just beautifully put together. And I couldn't recommend it enough. It's on Netflix. And it is just such a journey. And I think it was so interesting watching Close to You on Saturday night, and then yesterday sort of delving into the depths of Will and Harper and having another sort of trans story, especially someone who is transitioning later in life as well, and the gravity of that is absolutely massive. And it's just been a really nice couple of days of seeing two totally different cinema styles, with completely different writers, and having the one
totally different energy too.
Totally different energy, especially their old school SNL, they've got this, the sort of humor underneath everything is so present, but you still feel everything just as much as they do, and I think it's really opened it up as far as films at the moment, which is why I want to try and go catch more cinema this week.
Hells yeah. What else is on?
There's a couple that I wrote down that I want to see for the remainder of this week. We've got The Problemista, which is a comedy that was released last year featuring Tilda Swinton, which is already just a huge...
I'm clicking my fingers everywhere.
I love Tilda Swinton.
That is screening Thursday night at 6:30 p.m. or Sunday at 1:15. But then we've also got T-Blockers, which is a feature film directed by Alice Mayo McKay. Incredible trans filmmaker, very, very accomplished for being 19 and having so many features and shorts under her belt. It is incredible. And so that is also on. I obviously did not write down when because I have brain worms.
So correct me if I'm wrong. T Blockers is the speaking of brain worms, the kind of zombie horror turfs film where young men are infected with some weird black ooze that turns them into rabid violence.
It's giving me Manhunt.
Yeah. It's big Manhunt energy.
Yeah.
And go watch the trailer. It's magnificent. It is also on streaming services at the moment, I believe. And the trailer absolutely gives you this like baseball bat swinging trans girls beating down turf monsters. It looks so much fun.
So streaming services, yes, it is also screening this week, Thursday at 8:40 p.m. So that's at New Farm Cinemas. Yes, the blurb is: when ancient parasites rise from beneath a small town, taking the most fearful and susceptible as hosts, a young trans filmmaker finds herself the only one who can sense the possessed and rally the resistance before the horror escapes and spreads. Incredible!
I love the positioning that inadequate men are the most vulnerable in society. It's
fearful
very
and susceptible.
Thank you for just placing that there. That's very nice.
We're going to go to some music and we'll come back and we'll keep chatting some movies. Amplifying the voices of the trans and gender non-conforming community of Meanjin, Brisbane and beyond.
Transmission on 4ZZZ brings you the latest in trans community news, music and events.
Every Tuesday from 9am till 10am.
Join our team of hosts for an hour of celebrating the unique perspectives of the trans community.
Transmission, Tuesday mornings from 9am till 10am on 4ZZZ. You're listening to Transmission on 4ZZZ. My name is Ez. I use he, him pronouns.
My name is George. I use they, them pronouns.
My name is Sean. You're Abomination About Town, and my pronouns are still figuring out what the hell I'm doing with my life. She, her.
What you're doing right now, Sean, is we're talking about movies. So we're talking about trans films and trans representation. But mostly, we've been talking about Close to You, which is released with Dominic Savage and Elliot Page. A kind of like romance, but also returning to home after years of living in the city and transitioning and so many changes. Something that we didn't touch on too much, but I'd like to mention was that there is actually a romance involved with Close to You that does play into it a bit. With her name is Catherine. She's like Sam being Elliot Page, old friend / old flame from like high school, I guess.
Yeah, it's not explored that much. I think as well, like again coming back into that sort of like improvised script. There isn't a heck of a lot of backstory, so there are still those open questions.
Oh yeah, many open questions.
There's many open questions, but also it's just worth mentioning as well that Hilary Bark, who played our sort of, I guess, old flame, a really wonderful representation of a non-hearing person where it is not about them being deaf. Loved that. Huge fan of that. I think it was really well portrayed and just important to see in features, especially like a queer non-hearing person. So good.
Sure isn't it nice to see a disability not being a plot point or a
not featured in any way, shape, or form,
trauma,
and not mentioned
porn for the audience.
Yeah, it wasn't addressed. It was really
at all
about the relationship between Sam and Catherine was predominantly that focus.
Yeah.
And also all the obviously very confusing feelings that it brought up for both of them.
I think, experiencing someone returning into your life unexpectedly who was so huge for you and like such a sort of, teenage love. And having not seen that person for 20 years and now they've, been through this big transition and this big life change. So that felt so real. And Ez and I were talking off air about, I guess the complexity of showing the sort of like the romance element of this film, which I didn't think needed. It didn't need to be there, but also it was really beautiful and I really liked it, but I also really struggled with like the sort of, you've been back for 15 seconds and you're just like, hey, come away with me.
And now I'm really all swept up. But very, very get the U-Haul sapphic.
Yeah, it was gay as hell. Let's be
really
real.
gay.
So that's accurate.
But it was a nice addition to supplement and also soothe a lot of the tension that was in the house. So with returning home. So there was, I think it was a nice balance. But let's just go with because we're almost out of time. I think that the movie was fantastic. It really pulled on my heartstrings. It did leave a lot to be desired, though. I do feel like there wasn't a lot of closure on a lot of things at the end.
Yeah,
for me.
I feel the same way.
Yeah,
but still, just a.
Do you feel that was a deliberate choice or a deficit in the work?
That's such a good question. I think that I guess in an easy world you could just turn around and be like, oh, that's just a deficit, and that's like something that just wasn't tied up properly. But then there's a part of me that's like, well, I mean, when is shit like this really tied up neatly?
True. It's true. It's so true.
And our stories are ongoing. These are but brief chapters that we have.
Lesbian yearning.
100%. So much yearning. My goodness.
Should play some moaning, Lisa.
No. I think you're right. I think it is true and it is ongoing, and I think that's pretty well represented in the film. But worth seeing regardless of.
Absolutely.
All the bits and pieces, yeah.
Well, thank you so much, George, for coming in and chatting close to you and other films.
Easy peasy.
Yeah, New Farm Film Festival Queer Film Festival is still running as well.
Yeah.
Go check that out. They've got lots of great stuff. Also international ones as well.
Got some really fun stuff, yeah. So it's worth jumping on the website, on the 5-Star Cinema website, looking up New Farm and then having a little look at their lineup for the week.
Yeah. Get down to it.
I love that cinema. I used to live across the road from it years ago when it was derelict.
And
such a good cinema. 20 years ago when it was just a shell, and then when it got renovated, I was like, I remember seeing
delightful.
I remember seeing a Marilyn Monroe double at them when they reopened it.
Their retro stuff is so
my
good
mind.
as well.
Oh my god! Yeah,
anyway, get down there. Go on.
Get down there.
Go watch films. Go watch films.
We're gonna head off. Thank you so much. You've been listening to Tranzmission. Have a lovely rest of your day. Love you all. Goodbye.
Gotcha.
See ya.
Thank you so much for listening to Tranzmission. See you next Tuesday, 9 to 10 a.m. on 4ZZZ.